Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the HSE Half Hour. My name's Lauren. I'm the Head of Client Engagement here at Executive Network Group. Myself, my colleague Laura, who I'm sure that you've all seen many times now, are going to be bringing you a half-hour live show every month on all things recruitment and safety. So over to you, Laura.
Hello, yeah, so like I said, I'm Laura Alcott. Hopefully, you all know me by now, but I am Associate Director for HSE Recruitment and our parent company, Executive Network Group. What that basically means is I've spent 14 years recruiting health, safety and environmental professionals across all different industries, and getting to talk to you lovely lot day in, day out, essentially. But now that I'm a director, I get to go out to events, go to conferences, do all that fun sort of front-facing stuff, which is why I get to be with you live every month. So yeah.
Yeah, so if this is the first time that you're joining us today, I work closely with Laura and the safety recruitment team here at HSE. So I do a lot of research, creating white papers on safety industry trends, lots of information for our clients, basically, from our remuneration reports to everything in between. And we wanted to share this with our wider LinkedIn network. So as always, this is an interactive, a live session. Please do pop your comments or questions in the comment box. We'll get to them as soon as the conversation allows. And so let's move on. Today, we are discussing our most recent report. So this is titled Beyond Safety, the Impact of Mental Health. So this was something that I ran quite recently. We had a great response sent to our sort of more leadership side of our system. We had 170 professionals within safety, predominantly manager to director level across the UK getting involved. So this wasn't to discuss their personal mental health, but instead to investigate how wellbeing in the workplace is impacting their role and responsibilities as safety professionals. So definitely inspired by the recent table that we led in partnership with a leading law firm called Pinson Masons. So together, Laura brought, HR and safety professionals within a room, round table discussion, whose responsibility is wellbeing. And this, the conversation spiraled from Mental Health Awareness Week with this event, and we've created this report. So Laura, over to you. Looking at the report, I suppose, it states that 84% of safety professionals are highly educated on the impact of mental health and workplace safety. So, yeah, if you can elaborate on why this is important, why this is crucial.
Yes, absolutely. So I was really impressed when those numbers came back from the survey. Obviously, mental health and wellbeing has been getting a bigger and bigger subject over the past few years, and to see 84% of the survey respondents say, yeah, look, we are aware of it, we are educated on it, we are paying attention to it, we are making strides, was really, really satisfying, really, really good to see. And we always say this, awareness is kind of the first step in addressing any issue. We've looked at diversity and inclusion and stuff like that previously, it's the same thing. Being aware of it and knowing what the situation is the first step to making any sort of change. When safety professionals can really understand that link between, mental health, well-being and the workplace safety side of it, they can really kind of see that holistic risk profile. They can identify risks that come out of poor mental health, poor well-being, and they can make sure they're putting strategies in place to mitigate them. And you can't do this unless you know what's happening. It's absolutely, truth is power. We need to know what's going on. We need data, we need information, we need awareness. The more that we know about this situation, the more supportive we can be in a work environment. And ultimately, we know that by focusing on the mental health and the well-being, this does have an impact on reducing accidents, and it does have an impact on improving overall safety performance. So it's a really, really important thing. So this is why we spend so much time talking about it. I think, we've done a couple of sessions this year on the HSE Half Hour around the well-being, around the mental health thing. And that's why, because the more we talk about it, the more we put it out there, the more awareness that there is, the more change we can make, really. Alongside that, we've seen a really, really big influx of training in this sector as well, which I think is great. There's a lot more training providers out there looking at things like mental health first aid and various different wellbeing courses. The interesting thing is there's no defined route as it were, I suppose, within safety as to what you do for qualifications for wellbeing. The safety path is quite well trodden. We know that you can go sort of certificate to diploma. You can do the masters, and up from there. The wellbeing side isn't as well trodden, so we're still kind of figuring out the qualification side. But again, the fact that we're seeing so many training providers really focusing on this and putting that sort of stuff out there, I think is a really good step in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as safety professionals, that they're having this put on them a little bit more responsibility.
Yeah.
It's great that they can rely on that education as opposed to making an uneducated guess and
Yes.
not just someone's mental health, but a wider team and productivity, which we'll get to a bit later. So I've popped a bit of a snippet on the screen here. Hopefully you can see that. So it looks at our survey demographic. We did subsector this as well. So we did have a big influx of answers from manufacturing and construction, actually. We look at the questions that we ask, we lay them out like this around awareness and recognition as a workplace risk. But yeah, what I'll do is I will put the link to this report in the comments, just so that you can all see that. You can download it and go from there, really. So part of that report then, Laura, 44% of respondents said that they frequently deal with mental health issues amongst their employees, and 42% deal with it sometimes. So overall, a large percentage are dealing with that day to day. So what does this tell us about the prevalence of mental health concerns in the workplace? Do you think that this is a difference between industries? I've just mentioned some there. Construction, for example, we had Craig on a few episodes ago, which is a really insightful, look into the construction industry, and we spoke about the high suicide rate, which is unfortunate. So yeah, to kind of travel back for that, 86% are dealing with mental health episodes within the workplace, within safety. What does this tell us about it? And is there a difference in industries?
Absolutely. So two really good questions there. I mean, again, these numbers weren't necessarily shocking, but were probably higher than I thought they would be. To say 44% of the respondents are frequently dealing with that dealing with mental health as an issue. That's a big number, and definitely tracks with sort of the anecdotal evidence we've got of talking to people in the industry. I think the mental health wellbeing piece it's become more prevalent for a number of reasons. It comes up every month, and I hate the fact we're still talking about it, but COVID was a huge thing that we all went through together, right? And going through that pandemic, there was a real jump in awareness of how the mental and the physical kind of interconnected, and the importance of that in a workforce. If you looked at the industries that kept going during that time, food manufacturing had to keep going, and hospitals had to keep going, all that sort of stuff. The importance of those key workers was just unparalleled. And we had the safety industry and people in wellbeing, we spent a lot of time trying to protect the workforce and protect those key workers. And I think, that just changed the way we looked at things in terms of mental health and wellbeing. We understood the connection a little bit better, because it was just really, really clear during that pandemic. And then when you combine that with the generational differences that we're finding in the workplace, we talk about the generational differences quite a lot. New people coming into the industry, and actually this isn't just health and safety, this is going into any industry. The younger people coming through have just got a completely different attitude to work and mental health than say we do, the older generations do, and that's becoming more and more obvious. They're not willing to sacrifice their mental health for work, as people have done in the older times. Not saying that they should at all.
No, but it was
absolutely. They've got kind of the good attitude about it, and so they are expecting companies to pay attention. They're more open about talking about it. They will come in and talk about their mental health. They will talk about their well-being. They will get involved in initiatives that are going to change things. And I think that's really starting to shake things up, and will continue to, the more young people we get into the industry. And then if we're thinking about health and safety and well-being specifically, we've known for a long time in the health and safety industry, we've got an aging workforce. There is a gap here between people that are aging out of the industry and the people coming through. That there is a pretty significant gap there. And actually, I said this is specific to health and safety, but probably not. There are other industries facing this where we know that if people retire, we don't have enough people coming up to fill those ranks. So what's really important is that we keep people healthy and we keep them engaged in the workforce. We know the retirement age is increasing, unfortunately. We're having to work longer than previously we may have liked to. So it's really, really important that we're looking after physical and mental health, because these workers are going to be around for a while. Industry specifics is always a really interesting one. Whenever we do these sorts of surveys about the mental health, about the well-being, things like construction, it's huge. It's a really, really big topic. Not to get too socio-political, but look, there's a huge impact of toxic masculinity within the construction industry, where people don't feel that they can share their emotions necessarily, or they don't feel like they can talk about mental health as easily as maybe in the care sector or something like this. And I think when you combine that with an industry that just has a reputation for maybe dismissing mental health over the years, that's probably contributing to that sort of high suicide rate. And then you've also got the prevalence of drug and alcohol in those sorts of industries. You have a culture where you work really, really hard, you work really long days. Look at the weather this week. You're working out in 30-degree heat, sweating, and people go for a beer after work, and it's just part of that culture. And all of these things definitely contribute to that sort of mental health epidemic. But it's not just construction, it's anything sort of high pressure industries. We're really seeing a huge impact. So you could look at stuff like financial services. Financial services, they're working really, really long hours. It's a very high pressure role. There's big targets. There's a lot of pressure on them to do things right, and these big portfolios that they're looking after. And this all sort of contributes, obviously, to that mental health impact and the fact that it is becoming more and more prevalent. So high pressure industries, male dominated industries, definitely we see more of a prevalence. I just think overall, like we said with the generational thing, there's less pressure on people to pretend they're coping now.
That's like that stigma has been removed, hasn't it? I think what you mentioned about the generational side of it, and also construction. I think what links them both is the stigma around mental health. It's around the communication around it. Gen Z, as they're obviously targeted with a lot of this kind of mental health openness. It's because, as you've said, they're happy to walk into a workplace and say, this isn't right, this is what we're happy to influence change and direct that. Perhaps not so much within those more traditionalist environments like construction, where it's no, you work hard, you crack on, there's no conversation around that to be had. So I think that's a real interesting one and a great insight from you, Laura. Thank you. So how do mental health issues impact workplace culture and productivity according to our survey findings?
So look, we've known for a long time there's obviously a link here between mental health, between well-being, and between culture and between productivity. And we talk about this quite a lot, even if companies aren't inspired by the moral and ethical reasons for looking at well-being and mental health. They absolutely should be inspired by the bottom line, because there's a huge impact on productivity. I think you can look at I would really encourage everyone watching to actually download this survey and have a look. But the responses that we got from the professionals were really indicating that addressing mental health had a huge impact on their workplace culture, and had a huge impact on the productivity in the places that they worked. When employees feel supported and when they feel psychologically safe, they're engaged, they're focused, they're productive. And on the flip side of that, if it's unaddressed and they have unaddressed mental health issues and they don't feel that the company is supporting their well-being, this massively leads to absenteeism, presenteeism, decreased efficiency. It really negatively impacts the overall work environment and the organizational performance. And teams that are drained, we've seen this time and time again, they struggle with productivity. Of course they do. They're spending more time on the little things that don't matter. They're spending time on self-protected behaviors because they're burnt out. and they're exhausted, which makes, which obviously has an impact on their productivity. Yeah, we found this as well in lots of industries. When people are feeling that exhaustion, when they're feeling that burnout, they're naturally a little bit more defensive. They can't necessarily see the bigger picture. They can't focus on things that matter. And that's going to have an impact on whether they add value. It's going to have an impact on whether they connect with their colleagues, which absolutely, which absolutely makes a difference to well-being day to day. We look at a lot of surveys. We obviously run our own. We do these white papers, but I'm always reading stuff in this industry. And there was a recent Gallup poll that I was looking at that found actually it wasn't just about focusing on people's mental health and well-being within work and how work was impacting on that, but actually how well they were thriving in their personal lives, and that could have a real impact on productivity. So I think they said something like 61% higher likelihood of burnout from employees that were unhappy in their personal lives. So I think that's, it's a big number. And I think that's something we really need to focus on as well. I've been to a couple of conferences recently where the conversation has been, okay, well, do we have any responsibility to look after people? They're grown-ups. We can't tell them how to eat. We can't tell them how to live. But absolutely we do, because even if they are struggling with something outside of the work environment, that is impacting the work environment. That is going to have a real impact on the bottom line. Like we said, if we're taking morals out of it entirely, it's going to impact how well the company does. And I think the Gallup poll as well, I thought this number was staggering. It found that there was, on average, $322 billion of turnover that was lost annually across the globe just due to employee burnout. That is a crazy, crazy high number. So again, we're always giving you ways to kind of talk to senior leadership about these things and how you help them understand why it's important. That's why it's important.
That's the stat. Yeah.
That's the stat. If you don't address this, you're going to lose money. You're absolutely going to lose money. And other companies are going to be addressing it, and they're going to poach all your staff, and they're going to be much more profitable than you down the line. So yeah, there's a huge, huge impact and a huge connection between the two.
Yeah, 100%. So just over 60% of our respondents have noticed changes in their job responsibilities or protocols as a result of addressing mental health concerns in the workplace. So, Laura, what does this tell us about the evolving roles of safety professionals? What have you and the team personally seen in the last 12 months when we're talking about job specs, when we're talking about well-being being kind of harnessed within the safety world?
Yeah, so safety is just one of those industries where things are always being added onto it, right? We've seen this for years. So you have health and safety, and then they added on environmental, and then they added on quality, and then they added on sustainability, then they added on compliance, and well-being is one of those things that is being added onto it. So yeah, look, there is an impact. We're definitely seeing companies being more aware of it and asking safety people to be more aware of it because of that intrinsic link between safety and productivity and mental health. Going back to the COVID thing again, look, this is probably largely in part to the impact of COVID because it was so intrinsically linked then. Anecdotally, from a recruitment perspective, what we've probably seen in the market is there are now more jobs in wellbeing showing up independently of safety. So that's good. Yeah. They do want safety professionals to be aware of it, and they do want them to have that knowledge and have it built in. But companies are now starting to see the benefit in saying, okay, well, actually, let's not pile too much on one person. Let's actually take it seriously. Let's have it as a separate job. So I think the exciting thing about that is it's a really, really good area for people to sidestep into, or your next move. If you're in health and safety, there's going to be loads of opportunities coming up in that well-being. And that's great because it's more room for movement. There's more room for progression. So I think health and safety people that are covering it at the moment, it's part of their role. It's something they're passionate about. That's something we're probably going to see over the next couple of years is there's going to be more individual wellbeing roles that they could look at.
Yeah, fantastic. So another stat today after 79% of HSE professionals surveyed within our report stated they believe this should be a collaborative effort, which I think we said last time, didn't we? But are you surprised that more feel that it isn't their sole responsibility? And it's okay to say it should be collaborative, but who should be involved as part of that collective.
Collaborative with who? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not really surprised that people in the safety industry don't think it should be their sole responsibility, because we've said this about health and safety for years. Health and safety isn't their sole responsibility. They're drivers of it, but everybody is responsible for health and safety within a business. So that's very similar from the wellbeing side of it. I think, like we mentioned in the previous HSE Half and the roundtable that we did, the accountability needs to lie with senior leadership, and then responsibility needs to be shared amongst different departments. Which departments, as you asked, I think there's a number of departments that can be get involved. HR, absolutely. Safety, absolutely. Someone at one of our roundtables previously suggested something like getting the IT side involved, which I hadn't even thought of, but they used this example where within their company, they had lots of people that were on meetings all day, Teams meetings back to back to back to back. So they didn't have time to get up and go for a coffee, have a break, get away from the desk. And that was impacting the wellbeing and mental health. So the IT team implemented something where basically they weren't able to schedule Teams meetings for longer than 50 minutes. That was how long they were, so that there was 10-minute gaps in between all the meetings. And I thought, that's brilliant. So it's stuff like that. It's trying to think outside the box and trying to get everyone involved. I think if you could get a team leader from every department involved in this conversation, just imagine the sort of stuff you could come up with.
Yeah.
But the main thing with it is you've got to make sure there's good interaction. It's imperative you're kind of sharing data, you're talking, you're not being protective over your bit of the puzzle. Everyone needs to work really, really collaboratively.
Yeah. And ultimately, it's about engagement. There's no point having people from different departments if firstly the senior leadership aren't going to engage with wellbeing in the workplace as an initiative first of all. So I think it's about that engagement. But I do feel that a different perspective from each team, and I'd never even think of the IT example. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I really love that one too.
That's cool. So I suppose, to wrap up then, Laura, could you give us some good examples from the survey, of measures that people can implement that are watching this, they can implement to help with their own workplace wellbeing, please?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I won't give you all of them because I really want you to download the white paper and read it, but there was some really, really good suggestions that came out of it. And these examples came from the respondents. We asked them for their input, for the things that they're doing, for the things that are working well. And they had some really, really good ideas. So obviously making sure you've got really, really comprehensive mental health policies is up there. It's all very well talking about it, but it needs to, this can't be wishy-washy. It's sometimes been seen as a bit pink and fluffy in the past. This needs to have really, really comprehensive policies. It needs to address prevention. It needs to address intervention. It needs to have where people can go for support. These things are all really, really important, so that we're actually looking at data. We're looking at, okay, has this made an impact, rather than just, okay, well, people say they feel a bit better. We need some kind of data and some tracking for this. Absolutely tied into that is the culture piece. Because we've said this a lot about the accountability has to come from the top, from senior leadership, and this is where we've seen it fall down with a lot of clients, a lot of companies that we talk to, is that they've got all these great ideas, they've got all these great policies, HR's involved, safety's involved, all these people are really, really connected and engaged, but the CEO, the C-suite guys aren't involved, and they're undermining it because maybe the way that they act is contrary to how we would ask people to act, or those sorts of things can really, really impact it. If you've got your safety and your HR professionals talking to you and saying, this is how much we care about it, these are all the great things we're going to do, we really, really want you to switch off, we want you to not answer emails after 5, but then you've got a CEO who's always emailing you at midnight demanding a response, it completely undermines the whole thing. So you absolutely have to have that culture piece right. You've got to have the leaders involved. If they are open and they're going around and they're just encouraging dialogue around mental health, they're encouraging conversations, they're having chats with people themselves, that is just so eye-opening for people. It really makes people feel more comfortable in sharing and talking, that sort of thing. And then the training and education piece, we can't forget that. It's so important that we stay on top of this. It's a new subject. It's not as simple as just let's train a mental health first aider, and then, oh, we've covered it. We've got someone in the business, and we don't have to think about it for another 3 years. You know, you've got to have that ongoing training commitment. You've got to have that ongoing education, because it is changing all the time. We're learning new things. We're learning new ways of doing it, and it's not one size fits all. So I think if we just go in and say, oh, we've sorted it, and then you leave it alone, that's not going to work. It's going to be like a continuous thing. But yeah, loads of other really good ideas in the survey as well. So definitely download it, have a read.
Yeah, definitely. You know, a huge thank you to the 170, I think, people that got involved with that, because there was such an engagement within that survey. Some of the answers, it was fascinating to read. It was great to hear and see different perspectives on wellbeing in the workplace and how it's impacting safety as a career, not just, you know, day-to-day responsibilities. So I think that it's a really important topic, and one that I would encourage you to have a read of our report. So I'll pop that comment, I've popped the link, should I say, in the comments. So please do access it from there. Any questions around the findings, please reach out to me and Laura. There's definitely some interesting ones and some good stats, especially if you're a safety professional that's championing this within the workplace. You know, there's some great stats there to go to leadership with and say, have a read of this. What are your thoughts? Let's try and implement some of these things.
322 billion should get their attention.
Yeah, that's the key stat. Brilliant. You want to lose out on that, then that's up to you. But I think some great points that have been brought up today. Thank you very much for that, Laura. Have a read of our report. I think, you know, it's episode 22 now, episode 23 next month. What are we talking about then?
So next month, we're talking about the green skills gap, which I think is a really, really interesting one. So this was a topic that within our sustainability and environmental team kept coming up with clients and candidates and people that they were talking to, where there's just a bit of a disconnect at the moment between what employees want from environmental sustainability, what they're advertising for, and the skills that people have actually got in that industry. It's not all quite connecting yet because it is still quite new. So off the back of that, we've created a survey that's gone out to a number of our connections, asking about their thoughts on the green skills gap, what we can do to help address that. So there'll be an upcoming white paper on that subject. I'm actually going to put the link for the survey as well in the comments after this. So if anyone does want to fill that in and help us out with some research, that'd be great. But yeah, we're going to talk about all of that data next month, because you know we love data, and we're going to hopefully have some good suggestions on ways we can start addressing the skills gap. So yeah, it should be an interesting one. It's the 25th of July, I believe that one.
And same time as always for the live show. So yeah, we will see you then. Thank you.
See you next month. Bye.
Thanks, bye.